Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Sarah. So, in this video, I'm just going to tell my personal story of how I became an equity research analyst. I am not an equity research analyst now. I'm still a CFA charter holder, but I used to be an investment analyst and work on the buy side, and I was an equity research analyst, and then I was a financial advisor, and now I'm not doing that even anymore. I'm a marketing consultant for financial companies, but nonetheless, I was an equity research analyst at Lehman Brothers about, let me see, oh my gosh, it was over 10 years ago at this point. And I have a lot of videos about how I got that job and the skills that you would need to have to do it. So please subscribe to this channel and check out those playlists. But in this video, I'm going to tell you the steps I took to become an equity research analyst at Lehman Brothers. So it was, how long did it take me to get that job? So basically, when I started my career, I had been an English major in college. Like, my calling in life is definitely to do the creative kind of work that I'm doing now. And, I'm like a writer, blogger, YouTuber, I have tons of creativity. So I feel like for me to go down the path I went wasn't really a great decision, but I was young and I didn't have a heck of a lot of career guidance. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't really have any great role models professionally growing up. And so I kind of just fell into finance without really thinking about if being on the analytical side of it was right for me. Also had a little bit of like societal pressure based on where I went to school. I went to Harvard, which was a pretty awful experience. And I think I felt like I needed to do something that was quote unquote high powered. I kind of wanted to be a writer. I remember when I was in college, I wanted to be like a script writer for like Saturday Night Live. That was back when Saturday Night Live was popular, and I wanted to be like a script writer, and it just seemed impossible. And like, there weren't really that many like creative artistic types at Harvard. Everyone I felt was there to be like an investment banker, a lawyer, a doctor, or to go work at McKinsey. So I was kind of like the odd person out at Harvard, and I got a little bit, I think, misled maybe, but I can't blame anybody else but myself. I was young and I didn't really know myself. So that's just the first thing I would say is for anyone that wants to go into this field, like, it's not an easy job to get. And so I kind of wish someone had told me, like, do you even know that this is right for you? Because I know from my perspective, like, this was probably not the right way for me to even go. But, I'm very successful now and I'm doing the right thing and helping tons of people everywhere. And so, like, I definitely came into the right thing eventually, but it was just like, kind of like, I mean, not the best experience for a while, what I went through. So anyways, so here I am at Harvard, whatever. Like, I got this job at Fidelity Investments. I was an intern, and that was okay. I was just happy to not have to work in a restaurant. I used to have to work in the faculty club restaurant, which it paid me $10 an hour. At that point, it was like $10 an hour. Like, this was what, like 20 years ago, or even more than that. And that was a lot of money to me at that point, but it wasn't like the best job in the world. And I was just happy to get a better job, So I got this job at Fidelity Investments, and I was just doing like kind of, intern work there, and I got paid a lot and worked a lot of hours, and it was great because I got to like get away from Harvard, which, like I said, I had a like awful experience there and like was kind of a misfit at Harvard. Although I had a lot of friends and I was popular and stuff, but I still never felt like I really fit in at Harvard because everyone was these lawyer, doctor, investment banker types, and there I was. And I wanted to be like, I was like, there was that show In Living Color. Like, if I could have been like one of the fly girls on In Living Color as my career, like, that's what I would have done. I just had maybe no vision in college for myself or whatever. So after college, I get this job at JP Morgan as an RFP writer. I was great at that. Made a lot of money, but I still was like wanting to do something that I felt was a little bit more, high powered, like what everyone else from Harvard was doing. So, but also I had like just fallen in love with the stock market. I loved to go on to like Google Finance and Yahoo and research stocks. And I was starting to make my own money while I was at JP Morgan. And while I was doing that, I was investing it. And it was this whole kind of journey for me where I was experimenting. I didn't have kids or any serious financial obligations at that point. And I used to live in like Manhattan and go out with my friends and party and stuff. And it was like a fun time in life. I could be experimental. So I started experimenting with stocks and investing in stocks. And that's where I, was beginning to understand how the stock market really worked. And like trading, I was the only one out of all my friends that knew how to trade. And like someone was like asking me about their 401k, and I was like, oh, I knew all about it. I was like, well, this mutual fund or that mutual fund, and like, oh, you trade. And she was like, what do you mean I trade it? And I was like, okay, well, you trade it. Like you make a trade, you sell the thing and you buy the other, so it was cool. And so then after that, what I did was I had this job at JP Morgan, but I really wanted to work on the buy side. I wanted to be a portfolio manager because I wanted to manage stocks. And it was kind of a little bit, I think, narrow-minded of me, but I just was not going to want to do anything else. I was taking the CFA. And so I basically got this job on the buy side as an associate doing, at first it was like market research, like it's just kind of being like a little assistant to the portfolio manager. And that was really good. It was a great job. I learned a lot, but the portfolio manager was like, well, you're going to have to take the CFA. Well, I had started the CFA program before that, and they liked it that I was in the program. I had passed level 1, and I was just moving on through level 2. It was tough. I was on the buy side. I was, I had a good job. It was reasonable hours, but I still felt like I wanted something more. Like I wanted to be a little more high powered, and I was working in a very small firm. Not a lot of people knew the name of it. And I started just to get these like equity research interviews. And at that point it was, they were very plentiful. There were like let me see if I can even remember. Like I actually went for an interview at Lehman. I didn't get the job, but there were and it was in one particular sector that I didn't get the job. And they were considering me for other sectors as well. But, I think I went for an interview at maybe like JP Morgan Equity Research or something like that. I forget. Well, anyways, I was going for all these job interviews at the big places because I had some research skills and I was taking the CFA, and, my resume looked good. I had a good, solid job experience. And so I just started interviewing. I didn't get one of the jobs at Lehman, but then I waited a little while. I kept proceeding on in my CFA coursework and my MBA. And about, I would say like maybe a year later, after I had the initial Lehman interview, I was still working on the buy side, and I called them back. I just was like persisting, and I'm like, was it a year later? I don't even remember. This was like over 10 years ago. So I don't know if these details are wrong, forgive me, okay? I'm not trying to be inaccurate, but it's just like it was forever ago. Basically, I persisted and I followed up with the recruiter. It was the same recruiter at Lehman, and I was like, she's like, we liked you, but you just weren't a fit for one particular team. But there's this like paper and packaging analyst that has a job opening. And so I went in there, and I remember I had like literally one interview with the guy. And I don't even think it was a good interview because he didn't actually ask me any modeling questions. And that was, I think, feel like where my downfall began with Lehman, because I was totally not a fit for the role. Like I'm like super creative and talkative and just like very right-brained, I guess you could say. And I think, even that's a generalization, like who the heck knows what that even means, but I'm very like not about the spreadsheets and the models that much, and like calculating things to 4 decimal place accuracy, like just no, whatever, like just not, right? So basically I had to, I had to go in there. The guy talked to me. He was supposed to have somebody else interview me, but then that person did not interview me. And it was a pretty straight shot. Like, I guess he just liked me, and he liked my writing skills, and he was, excited about having someone that thought about things a little bit differently. And in theory, I think it, sounded good. But an equity research job, it's the other thing is like I didn't really understand what it was, because if I had, I would have just known that I was just not compatible with it. But, basically, um, it sounded good on paper to have somebody with really good writing and communication skills be in this role, but when it came down to it, the role, what it turned out to be, was like a lot of modeling. It wasn't even like thoughtful modeling where it was like, let's map out different scenarios. It was basically like maintenance modeling where, they would have the equity research conference calls, and the analysts would all get on the conference calls and talk to the company management and ask them questions, and the analysts would go and they would have to update the models for that quarter's results. So, like what were the earnings, what were the expenses, blah, blah, and you just had to update it. And I mean, I'm making it sound overly simple, but it was not this simple. But, there are a million different details of it, but you had to update like the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. And you had to do that for every company that had an earnings call every quarter. And then you had to write up the report, and then the analyst would release it to, I think it was, what was it even? The service call, I think it was First Call or something like that. But anyways, the analyst would release the information. It would be disseminated out to the street. And, the analyst would use I was not an analyst, actually. Like I say analyst because I did analytical work, but I was technically an equity research associate. When you come in, when you're at a junior level, you're not an analyst per se, you're an associate. And so I was like an associate, and I was creating these models that the analyst then used to make the buy, sell, or hold recommendation. And so, yeah, I just basically did research and helped the analyst to make calls on the companies that he was covering. I never really got involved too much with the meetings. Like sometimes, I think I went to like maybe one meeting with the company management, but for the most part, the analyst was the one that was in touch with the company, because the company any publicly traded company, like, is in touch with the analysts, and it's very regulated, and it's not like it's a freestanding relationship where they can just communicate freely. It's very controlled, but the analyst has to get information from the company, and the company, they have to portray and represent what's going on at their company. They have to do it accurately, but it is, a thing where they have to be very careful about what they say and how they say it, because their company's reputation and their financial, their reputation as a company is really on the line. And so it's important for them to have these relationships with the analysts as well, and for them to have good relationships where they're understood. So I wasn't really involved with those meetings. I was very removed from that whole process. But yeah, that was my experience as an equity research analyst at Lehman Brothers. You can tell, like, I didn't get the job because I went in there and did like awesome modeling. And like I said, he didn't even ask me really about the models. I got the job because I think I persisted and followed up with the recruiter, and I got an interview in an industry where I felt like it wasn't like a major industry. Like when I was at Lehman, there were huge teams. Like there was like one of them was like I mean, I was in the industrial space, right? Paper and packaging was the industry, but it was in the industrial sector. And so there was like a chemicals team. And I remember there were two analysts on the paper and packaging team. But I think that was different, because I think normally up until then there had only been one analyst. But then on the chemicals team, I think there were like three associates. There were three associates and one analyst. And this was very much the case. There were other teams where there were like for example, consumer products, consumer discretionary, there were many different analysts in that sector. And within different industries, even, there were many different analysts, and the analysts all had associates under them. And so there were like much larger sectors and industries, but this was a very small industry. The team was small. But I think that had a little bit to do with it too. So that's another thing I would just tell you. Like sometimes people say, well, if I want to get into equity research, like what should I go for? And I'm like, you should specialize, because I got in and it's not that I had a specialized knowledge of paper and packaging. I think I knew a lot about one of the companies before I went in there, but I didn't know a lot about that industry even. But if you were looking to get in, one thing I would tell you is definitely know the industry, because I think the fact that I was in a very kind of like nichey little industry definitely led to me getting the job. Whereas if I had been going up, and I think I had been going up before against like people that had extensive knowledge of like healthcare or biotech or, you know, the other bigger industries, it was, I think, a little bit more competitive. So that's what I would say, is definitely get a niche and just know the heck out of it, because I think the niche definitely played a big factor in it. And so that's the story of how I became an equity research analyst at Lehman and what my experience was at Lehman. I mean, what ended up happening was I wasn't great. I was not a top performer. In fact, I performed very badly there, which should not be a surprise to you, because like I've been saying this whole time, it was really not my calling in life. And so I got riffed when Lehman went down. I think I was one of the first ones to go, but then, you know, Lehman like went down afterwards. So after that, I just did other things, you know, in the industry that were much better suited to my personality. And I never went back to being an equity research analyst. Will never go back, but, you know, I still remember those days. And so that's my story of how I was an equity research analyst at Lehman Brothers. So I hope that this is helpful to you. And for more videos on this subject, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.